Hey guys, welcome into yet another edition of Football Center with Goma. It is a beautiful day. The weather is overcast, there's no sunlight out today, but nonetheless still a beautiful day to be alive. Now another action-packed weekend full of football is on the horizon, and we'll be taking a preview at some of the biggest games coming up in the Bundesliga this weekend. But first and foremost, this is what the Bundesliga has to offer. Now on Friday, that is today, the Berlin Derby takes place. Hertha Berlin take on Union Berlin. Then tomorrow, Freiburg play Werder Bremen. Hoffenheim visit Paderborn. Wolfburg face a tough test of Borussia Dortmund. Or you could say the other way around, as Dortmund are the ones that are chasing down Bayern Munich. So they have an obstacle ahead of them in Wolfsburg. Borussia Monchengladbach take on Leverkusen. Bayern face Frankfurt. Then on Sunday, FC Schalke play Augsburg. RB Leipzig travel to Mainz while Cologne take on Düsseldorf. So, an action-packed weekend. And here are some of the big games or the previews of some of the big games that are coming up on your television screens. Firstly, Wolfsburg against Borussia Dortmund. Now, Dortmund will face an informed Wolfsburg this weekend that is sure to pose a serious test and question as Dortmund are in pursuit of Bayern Munich and prior to the big game against the league leaders on Tuesday. Now, Bayern Munich are 4 points clear of Borussia Dortmund, and they know that if they want to keep the pressure on them, nothing but a win will do against Wolfsburg. Now, they will say that a win against them will be doing them and the rest of the league a favor, as they will prevent Bayern Munich from running away with it. But Wolfsburg will care less about what Borussia Dortmund is trying to do for the league, and the only thing that they'll have on their agenda is victory. The league leaders Bayern Munich themselves will have a little case of revenge before the big game against Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday. They face FC Frankfurt, the club that thrashed them 5-1 in the first matchup that led to the departure of Niko Kovac and the introduction of Hansi Flick. And since then, Bayern have gone from strength to strength, and since that 5-1 thrashing of Bayern, Frankfurt have only gone and declined. They have lost their last 4 league games, and on restart day, they lost to Borussia Mönchengladbach by 3-1. Now, I think that says the story itself. Bayern Munich thrashed Union Berlin by 2-0, a fairly convincing win, and that tells the story of the two teams. Bayern Munich are in good, perfect shape, while Frankfurt are struggling at the moment. This looks like a no-brainer, and I feel Bayern Munich will have an easy one against FC Frankfurt. Now, one fixture that you must definitely have to look out for is Borussia Mönchengladbach versus Bayer Leverkusen. Both these clubs have had standout seasons so far, and both sit in the top half of the table. Borussia Mönchengladbach occupy 3rd position, while Bayer Leverkusen occupy 5th position, with 2 points separating these two clubs. They both made winning starts as the Bundesliga returned last weekend, with Bayer Leverkusen thrashing Werder Bremen by 4-1, and Kai Havertz stealing all the headlines with the brace, while Borussia Mönchengladbach scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes on their way to a 3-1 victory over FC Frankfurt. 2 clubs and 1 team will have to make a statement, and whichever team wins this game will improve their chances of Champions League qualifications for next season. And finally, the game that kickstarts the Bundesliga weekend, the Berlin Derby. Hertha Berlin hosts Union Berlin in some sort of fierce but friendly rivalry between these two clubs. To fully understand the magnitude of this derby, you have to know a little bit about the history of the city of Berlin. Now, you historians are going to have to help me out here a little bit. I want to share with you the little fragments that I know about the history of this derby and the city of Berlin. We all know that after World War II, Germany was shared amongst the Allied powers, and so were the cities. One of those cities was Berlin. Now, a few years down the road, the Berlin Wall was built, and this separated Berlin into 2, East Berlin and West Berlin. Now, the wall was built due to political reasons, but as time went on, these two cities started developing differently in social terms and economical terms. Eventually, the wall came crumbling down, and these two cities tried to integrate once again. There was some sort of instability during that time. Now enter football. Football came in and tried to harmonize the situation. There were a number of clubs that stemmed from the city of Berlin, and each time these clubs came face to face with each other, the Berlin fans would come together in unity to support the two clubs. There was no sort of hatred or negative chants about the opposing team. They all sang songs together, and each football stadium was electric. The football players themselves, after each game, would go off and grab a bite together. Now, a few years down the road, Hertha Berlin and Union Berlin came about, and perhaps these are the two clubs that actually represent very well East Berlin and West Berlin. Now, there was no hostility between these two clubs, none at all. Whenever they would play together, it was like a celebratory sort of game. But one club started flourishing after the Bundesliga or German football system came along. Bundesliga, Bundesliga 2, Bundesliga 3. One team started flourishing, which was Hertha Berlin, while the other was going through some tough periods, which was Union Berlin. Relegation after relegation, and there was a point at which they were almost out of business. Eventually they stabilized and they came into Bundesliga 2. And since then, there have been a number of games between Hertha Berlin and Union Berlin. And each time these two clubs come together, the fans have tried to show that they are still one. But the media has caused a lot of riff-raff over the years. In typical media fashion, the media has tried to create some sort of hostility and rivalry between these two clubs, and during that time, most of these fans actually succumbed to that. They came up with insulting chants, they came up with the negativity, and that rivalry came about. So if you were to ask any Berlin fan, either Hertha Berlin or Union Berlin, is there actually a rivalry between these two clubs? They'll tell you straight-faced, not really. It was the media that came up with these sort of rivalries and hostility between these two clubs, and eventually the fans succumbed to that. But there was no intent of that. On game day, they will show that. They will show that there's bragging rights. They want the bragging rights and stuff, but there's no actual hostility like the Liverpool versus Manchester United sort of game, or the Manchester City and Manchester United sort of game. None of that. But where we are at the moment, there's that sort of rivalry. That's why I call it sort of friendly but fierce rivalry between these two clubs. So that game kicks off the Bundesliga weekend, and it's on show tonight. So you can catch it on Star Times, as I mentioned last time. Now that wraps up some of the previews of the big games that are coming to your screens this weekend. You can choose any, but one thing that I can show you that they are going to be electric. You can watch those, or you can watch the games that I haven't talked about. It is football, and as a football fan, you should enjoy all sort of football regardless of what teams are playing. The biggest one, I should say, this weekend has to be Wolfburg against Borussia Dortmund. That game is going to be pivotal in how the season actually turns out to be. A win for Borussia Dortmund keeps the pressure on Bayern Munich, while a win for Wolfsburg gives Bayern Munich the chance to actually run away with it. And remember, 3 days after Saturday, 3 days after the Wolfsburg versus Borussia Dortmund game and the Frankfurt versus Bayern game, the top two clubs in the line are going head to head. So this weekend is really pivotal. From me over here, that is going to be it. I'm going to finish this video from here, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, heart if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great weekend. Peace.